You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have been talking a lot about this deportation case that's going back and forth in between the courts. The Trump administration has now invoked what's called the state secrets doctrine. Them doing this is as insane a move as they can possibly pull. Can you explain why?
Yeah, Brian, this is absurd. You know, we got to back up a little bit. First, Judge James Boasberg, who is presiding over the litigation regarding the unconstitutional deportation by the Trump administration of a couple of hundred Venezuelan immigrants, and they deported them to El Salvador. We can talk about why that is in a minute. But Judge Boasberg, understanding that these people were essentially being kidnapped and, sent to foreign lands without having their constitutional rights protected, because before you deport somebody, you are entitled to notice and an opportunity to be heard in court. The Trump administration says, we have no interest in complying with the Constitution. So Judge Boasberg issued an order on March 15th. Stop. Do not send any more planes carrying migrants who haven't had their constitutional rights honored to Venezuela, El Salvador, or anywhere else. And in the event any of these planes have taken off, you need to turn them around and bring them back. Importantly, Judge Boasberg said, well, you don't need to release them from custody. You just need to get them into court to honor their constitutional rights of notice and opportunity to be heard. You know what the Trump administration said in the face of that court order? Nope, we're not going to do it. So the next thing Judge Boasberg did, he said, okay, fine. Now I'm going to need a whole bunch of information and evidence to see if you intentionally violated my court order such that I should consider holding Trump administration officials into contempt. And when the judge asked for that additional information, the Trump administration, through his dirty DOJ lawyers, said, no, we're not going to provide you with information. And here is the reason they gave the judge for refusing to provide that information. This is protected information under the state secrets doctrine. We couldn't possibly tell you, Judge, the information that you are seeking. What information is that? He wanted to know who these people were that were unlawfully, unconstitutionally deported, what time the planes left, and what time the planes landed. Now get this, Brian. This would be laughable if it wasn't so serious, this deprivation of constitutional rights. There are flight crews who know this information, when the planes took off, when they landed, and who was on the planes that went to El Salvador. There are ground crews. There are airfield crews. There are hundreds and hundreds of Venezuela migrants who know when the planes took off and landed. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people in El Salvador who know when the planes landed because they took these people into custody. And Brian, here's the kicker. The Trump administration filmed this stuff and released the videos publicly, but now they're telling Judge James Boasberg he can't possibly be trusted with this information because it would reveal state secrets. Now, Brian, who is Judge Boasberg? First of all, he's the chief judge of federal district court in Washington, D.C., but here's the kicker. He's also the chief judge of the Alien Terrorist Removal Court, which was created by Congress in 1996 to deal with whether alien terrorists should be deported or not. This is so absurd. It is so, laughable that they're trying to pull out this state secrets doctrine to prevent giving Jeb Boasberg the information that will enable him to say, you know what? You violated my order, and I'm going to initiate contempt proceedings against you.
So just to clarify, so I can make sure that I'm understanding here, we couldn't possibly understand somebody who is perhaps the most qualified lawyer in his field to deal with this exact issue, because we need to preserve secret information that they also simultaneously posted on the internet on their official White House channels for the entire world to see as part of propaganda videos. And so that's how they have to preserve secrecy in this whole process that they're holding as dear as they possibly could. Does that about sum it up?
Brian, you have a firm grasp of the rationale that Trump's dirty DOJ lawyers are offering for not disclosing this information to Jeb Boasberg. I'm going to just take a flyer and say the reason they don't want to provide any more information is because they know they violated the court order,
right,
and they know they will be facing sanctions for contempt. So, this is a game of chicken they're playing. They're not playing it well, and I predict it is not going to end well for these DOJ lawyers who are making these absurd arguments.
Okay, so they invoke the state secrets doctrine, and it is so aggressively antithetical to reality. And so, what happens here, as far as Judge Boasberg's concerned? Can he impose sanctions on these lawyers for taking such an unserious approach to what he's doing? I mean, clearly he's not going to stand for this and just say like, "Oh yeah, the same video that you used to create full-blown fascist propaganda and broadcast to hundreds of millions of people, that's the information that you're supposedly saying is so secret that we can't even tell a judge who's presiding over this case about?"
Yeah, let me tell you what Judge Boasberg has available to him by way of sanctioning, punishing, holding in contempt these DOJ officials. But before I do that, let me just round out what we were discussing, because when they say we couldn't possibly provide this information to Judge Boasberg, there are actually mechanisms that are designed to address just this highly sensitive information that prosecutors need to share with judges. Judges often have some of our nation's sort of highest level security clearances, and they have the ability to do two things: take information from prosecutors ex parte and in camera. Two fancy Latin terms. We don't need to use Latin terms, but lawyers tend to make things more confusing than they need to be. A judge can actually say, I'm going to take this information ex parte. What does that mean? Only one party will be privy to it. So the DOJ attorneys can literally share this, confidential information with the judge, and they can exclude the defense attorneys who represent the Venezuela immigrants whose constitutional rights were violated. Plus, the judge can do it what's called in camera, meaning literally behind closed doors, in chambers, no defense attorney, no public access, no media access. So there are so many vehicles for the DOJ lawyers to provide this information to Judge Boasberg. So what happens now? Well, there are two kinds of contempt that the judge can pursue. There's civil contempt and there's criminal contempt. Civil contempt is basically when the judge wants to urge or inspire or encourage the executive branch to comply with orders. It feels like that ship has already sailed, but he can impose fines, for example, on an administration, fine them each day they don't comply with court orders. But like I say, the damage has already been done here because, several hundred Venezuelan immigrants are now in prisons in El Salvador. Why El Salvador? Well, Brian, the reporting is that the El Salvadoran government agreed to pay the Trump administration money to house the Venezuelan immigrants in an El Salvadoran prison. Shocking, I know. So we may be looking at criminal contempt. What does criminal contempt look like? Well, when you intentionally violate a court order, you are then put on a mini trial. Guess what you get? You get a constitutional right to notice and an opportunity to be heard. Exactly the same rights that the Trump administration deprived these Venezuelan immigrants of. And then there's a mini trial, and the judge decides if, for example, a Trump administration official or DOJ attorneys have intentionally violated court orders. They can be held in contempt. They may be fined personally, but even more importantly, they can actually be sent to prison for a period of days or months. So this is nothing to play with, and I would suggest if they think they're going to keep playing this hide-the-ball game from Judge Boasberg, it's not going to end well for the Trump administration.
Glenn, given the whole suite of options that are in front of Judge Boasberg, is there any indication as to whether he's going to go very extreme or very slow in terms of the application of these punishments?
Yeah, it's a good question. Rarely do judges hold executive branch officials in contempt. They have.
Well, I would also push back. Rarely does something like, do they give them a reason to the extent that the Trump administration has.
And Brian, it was an appellate court judge just yesterday, Judge Patricia Millett, who actually said during an oral argument on the legality of Judge Boasberg's original temporary restraining order, saying you can't keep deporting people unconstitutionally, and I'm ordering you to turn planes around. Judge Millett, the appellate court judge, one of three on the panel that heard oral argument yesterday, said to the DOJ lawyers, you know, Nazis had more rights, were treated better during World War II by the American criminal justice system than you are treating these Venezuelan immigrants. I mean, those are some strong and pointed words and criticism of what Trump's administration is doing. I think Judge Boasberg is taking this deadly seriously. I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet he is deeply offended, as was I as a career federal prosecutor, seeing these unseemly games that are being played by DOJ lawyers. So I think he is probably going to push the sanctions as far and as hard as he believes the evidence warrants.
And finally, when can we expect some type of timeline in terms of next steps? Because the Trump administration really has mastered the art of just delay, delay, delay. And so they employ these dilatory tactics knowing full well that really they benefit from justice delayed, justice denied. And they did that during Trump's own personal prosecutions prior to him becoming president. And clearly they're content to do the exact same thing here.
Yeah, I have a feeling next steps we're going to know pretty quickly. The reason I say that is because this invocation of the state secrets doctrine is so contrary to the evidence that we have all seen, even publicly revealed, that it's just downright insulting that they would make this claim to a federal judge or any judge. So I have a feeling the next thing we may see is Judge Boasberg issue what's called a show cause order. And he will order the DOJ prosecutors to show cause why they haven't violated his court order and why they shouldn't be held in contempt. And then it's on. Then we probably move to contempt proceedings. And, you know, that is dramatic. But if ever contempt of federal government officials is appropriate, it's in this instance.
Well, look, a lot to still be uncovered in this case in particular, and you can tell that by the fact that Donald Trump has been hell-bent on this absolute tear of trying to undermine Judge Boasberg's legitimacy in very much the same way that he's done to other judges who he perceives as the biggest threat. And so this is not going away anytime soon, and I do suspect that we will see some quick action in terms of what's going to happen next here. So as soon as we have any update, we'll bring it to you. For those who are watching right now, if you want to follow along, which I would highly recommend you do, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.